What's shaking, my friends? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Shay, and today we're going to talk about all the books I DNF'd in 2022. So one of my big goals in 2023 is to DNF some more books in hopes that it will keep me from having a mediocre year. I have had a mediocre year the past couple of years that I've been reading, and so I think DNFing more will help me out with this. So in 2022, I DNF'd a total of 13 books. And this is in no particular order. We'll just hop right into it and I will tell you what I did not finish. The first book is going to be Rise of Gods, which is the first book in the Paternus series by Dirk Ashton. This is an urban fantasy, and the issue I had with this was over-sexualization of characters. Very, very high on the male gaze. I overall just found myself not wanting to continue. I've heard that the later books get better, but I'm done with reading a first book because, you know, the second book is better or the third book is better. The next book is also self-published, and that's going to be The Crimson Queen by Alec Hudson, and this I think was not the book's fault, it was my fault. I liked the characters, but this is very much a journeying story. I really liked the first portion of the story, and then we go on to this long journey, and I don't know about you, but journeying in fantasy is just not one of my favorite things, and it led me to DNF the book. Hunt the Stars by Jessie Mihalik. I was really looking forward to this book in 2022. It released in February, and I read it that month, I believe, and promptly DNF'd it because I just wasn't feeling the characters together in a romance, and I wasn't feeling that the plot was picking up enough, and I read pretty good into the book, but I just wasn't jiving with the love or the romance, and this was a romantic sci-fi, and so if I wasn't jiving with the couple, I could not continue to read the book. Black Flame by Will White. This is a book in the Cradle series. I did DNF the Cradle series this year because I just learned that progression fantasy is not for me. I don't like the act of a character just training montages over and over and over and over and over again. There is a little bit of plot in there, but he basically trains to better himself over and over and over and over again, over and over and over and over again. And I pushed through because, again, people were saying it gets better, and for me, it just didn't get better, and I was fine putting the book down, and I knew I wouldn't feel bad about it. Wings of Ebony by J.L. This is an urban fantasy, and a YA urban fantasy, and I did enjoy this. However, I just could not get into the characters. The story was fine. It was the characters that I couldn't get into, and that's why I ended up DNFing. Firefight by Brandon Sanderson. Who would have thought that I would ever DNF a book by Brandon Sanderson? But this is the second book in the Reckoner series. The first one is Steelheart. I liked Steelheart fine. You know, I think Brandon has this formulaic thing he does with his writing now where he just does this really bang ending. He has a really good beginning, I think, and the meanders in the middle, and then he has this really bang of an ending, and that's what Steelheart did. Made me want to continue on. Even though I only gave Steelheart 3 stars, I continued on to Firefight, and I just realized that it was much of the same in Steelheart, where it was just kind of mediocre. Now, I knew there was going to be bangs at the end, but I just didn't want to read a mediocre book to get a bang at the end. The Obsidian Tower by Melissa Caruso. This is one that I DNF'd quite recently, and the only reason I DNF'd this one was as well because of the characters. I wasn't jiving with them, and the plot wasn't moving fast enough for me to kind of get into the book. Nothing was hooking me to want to continue on in the series. How to Fail at Flirting by Denise Williams. I was in a slump, and when I'm in a slump, I kind of pick up romance reads because I feel like that helps me get out of a slump. So I picked this one up after hearing some good reviews, and I promptly DNF'd it. And the reason is because it was kind of an insta-love thing, and I was not jiving with the steamy scenes. And so if that is not the case, I'm going to have to put the book down. The House of the Scorpion by Nancy Farmer. This is a YA dystopian book, and I'm sure many people have heard of it by now if they haven't read it. And It was okay. The story was okay. But again, I need to practice not finishing just okay stories. So if I'm in the middle of the book and it's just okay, then I need to put it down. And I believe that in this book, I was about halfway through and I just still thought it was just okay. And I put it down. I also just didn't jive with the characters in this book. The Rook by Daniel O'Malley. This book was very meant to be a humorous fantasy, and I did not jive with the humor. So I could not continue on, but I think if it's your kind of humor, it could very well be a good book for somebody. And then the last one I DNF of 2022 is Witchmark by C.L. Polk. I was supposed to read this in January, but I picked it up on the last day of December because I was like, there's no way I'm going to finish it today. So I'll just start it and finish it in January. And I read about 30-something% of the book and decided to DNF because it was kind of a historical romantic fantasy. And I was not jiving with the romance. It was queer. So if you like that, if that's something that sounds good to you, I just didn't. It was more like an insta-love type deal. And insta-love, if I've talked about this in this whole DNF video, I am not a fan of insta-love. So I don't think I'll ever be a fan of insta-love. There is another book that I DNF'd. I talked about 12. There's a 13th, but I'm not going to review it here because it was during the time when I was reading horror books and it was self-published and it only had like 7 reviews, so I don't really want to hurt that book and I don't want to hurt that author. So I will not be talking about that, but just know there was a 13th book. So I DNF'd 13 books and I read 171. I think that in 2023, the best thing to do is just to DNF if I'm not feeling it. And I spoiler alert, it's January and I'm doing it. I'm making progress in this goal. All right, guys, that's it. Tell me what you've DNF'd. Tell me your strategies for DNF. Do you feel guilty about DNFing? Let me know all the tea down in the comments below. I'll catch you guys later.